Look closely at your life and you may notice something disturbing. The same kind of pain keeps finding you. Different people, different circumstances, different years. And yet somehow, the same wound over and over. The same kind of relationship that leaves you feeling the same way you always end up feeling. The same dynamic at work, with a new cast of characters playing roles you've seen before. The same conflict, the same disappointment, the same ache, recurring across your life with a consistency that starts to feel less like bad luck and more like something you are somehow arranging without meaning to. And the truly unsettling part is that it often looks like choice. You are drawn to the very people and situations that will hurt you in the familiar way. You feel a pull toward them, a strange, almost magnetic attraction that you don't understand and can't seem to resist. You promise yourself this time will be different, and then you find yourself once again in the same painful place, wondering how you got here when you swore you never would again. It can make you feel cursed, or broken, or as though some part of you actively wants to suffer. Carl Jung understood this pattern more deeply than almost anyone, and his explanation is neither that you're cursed nor that you want to suffer. It is that there is something operating inside you, beneath your awareness, with a will and an energy of its own, that keeps drawing you back to the same pain. He called it a complex, and he understood that until you become conscious of it, it will continue to shape your life from the darkness, pulling you again and again into the same wound, while you stand there believing you simply have bad luck or bad judgment or a fate you cannot escape. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who founded analytical psychology, made his earliest major discovery not through abstract theorizing but through experiment. Early in his career, he conducted word association tests, reading lists of words to patients and measuring their responses, including their hesitations, their emotional reactions, the words that produced disturbance. And he noticed something striking. Certain words would reliably trigger a reaction that was out of proportion to the word itself, a delay, a stumble, a flash of emotion, a disturbance that revealed the presence of something charged beneath the surface. He found that these disturbances clustered around particular themes, and he concluded that the psyche contains organized centers of emotional energy formed around particular experiences that operate beneath conscious awareness. He called them complexes. A complex, in Jung's understanding, is a cluster of emotionally charged thoughts, memories, and associations gathered around a core theme, usually formed through significant or painful early experiences. Imagine a wound from childhood, a way you were hurt, rejected, abandoned, shamed, or frightened. Around that original wound, the psyche gathers associated memories, emotions, beliefs, and expectations, building them into an organized structure with a powerful emotional charge. This structure is the complex. It is like a splinter psyche, a semi-independent personality within the larger psyche, organized around the original wound and carrying all the emotional energy of it. What makes the complex so significant and so relevant to the pattern of repeated pain is that it is not passive. It is not merely a memory sitting quietly in storage. Jung understood that complexes are autonomous. They have a life of their own, an energy of their own, a will of their own. They can be activated by circumstances that resemble the original wound, and when they are activated, they take over, flooding us with the emotions of the original experience, distorting our perception and driving our behavior in ways that our conscious mind neither chooses nor controls. Jung put this in a way that captures the strangeness of it precisely. Everyone knows, he observed, that people have complexes. What is far less understood, and far more important, is that complexes can have us. This is the crucial reversal. We tend to think of a complex as something we possess, a psychological feature we carry around. But Jung saw that it works the other way. The complex possesses us. When it is activated, it takes control, and we become temporarily its instrument, thinking its thoughts, feeling its feelings, acting out its patterns, all while believing we are freely choosing. This is the mechanism by which the same pain keeps finding you. It is not you choosing the pain. It is the complex operating autonomously beneath your awareness, drawing you toward the situations that will activate it once again. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. The deepest and most puzzling part of this pattern is why. Why would something inside you draw you toward the very pain you most want to avoid? Why would a psyche, presumably organized around survival and well-being, keep steering you back into the same wound again and again across an entire lifetime? Jung's understanding of this is subtle, and it dissolves the apparent paradox. The complex, remember, is organized around an original wound, and it carries an enormous charge of unresolved emotional energy. That energy seeks discharge, seeks expression, seeks, in some sense, resolution. And the way it moves toward these things is by recreating the conditions of the original wound. The complex is drawn to situations that resemble the experience that formed it, because those situations activate it, bring its charge to the surface, and offer the possibility, however rarely realized, of finally working through what was never worked through. This is why you feel that magnetic pull toward the familiar pain. The complex is recognizing, beneath your awareness, the conditions that match its own structure, and it is drawing you toward them. There is also the matter of familiarity, which runs deeper than we usually acknowledge. The original wound, however painful, is known. It is the emotional territory you learned first, the pattern that shaped your earliest understanding of how relationships work, how the world treats you, what you can expect. And the psyche is powerfully drawn to the familiar, even when the familiar is painful, because the familiar is where it knows how to operate. An unfamiliar happiness can feel more threatening, more destabilizing than a familiar pain. The complex draws you toward the known wound partly because the known, whatever its cost, feels like home in a way that the unknown never can. Jung also understood that the complex operates largely through projection. Because it lives beneath conscious awareness, we do not experience the complex as something inside us. Instead, we experience it as something in the outer world. We project it onto other people and situations, seeing in them the qualities that match our complex, and we are drawn to precisely the people who will fit the pattern. The person with an abandonment complex unconsciously selects partners who will abandon them. The person with a complex around not being good enough finds, again and again, the relationships and situations that will confirm their inadequacy. This is not conscious choice. It is the complex projected outward, recognizing its own pattern in the external world and drawing the person toward it with a force that feels like attraction, like chemistry, like fate. And here is the tragic dimension that Jung understood so clearly. Each repetition is, in a sense, an attempt at resolution that fails. The psyche returns to the wound, hoping, unconsciously, to finally master it, to change the ending, to resolve what was left unresolved. But because the whole process is unconscious, because the person does not understand what is happening or why, the repetition simply reproduces the original pain rather than healing it. The person chooses the partner who resembles the parent who wounded them, unconsciously hoping to finally win the love that was withheld. and instead re-experiences the original withholding. The wound is not healed by the repetition. It is deepened. And the complex, its charge renewed, draws the person toward the next repetition and the next, in a cycle that can consume an entire life. Jung had a profound understanding of the relationship between the unconscious and what we experience as fate, and it speaks directly to the feeling that the same pain keeps finding you as if by destiny. He recognized that when a powerful psychological pattern operates entirely beneath our awareness, we do not experience it as coming from within us. We experience it as coming from outside, as circumstance, as luck, as the way the world simply is, as fate. This is the experience of the person caught in the repetition of pain. They do not feel that they are choosing the pattern. They feel that it keeps happening to them. The relationships keep going wrong. The same kind of person keeps appearing. The same disappointments keep arriving. From the inside, it genuinely feels like fate, like some external force is arranging these repetitions, some curse or bad luck that follows them everywhere they go. And in a sense, they are right that something is arranging it. But the something is not external. It is the complex, operating from within, projected outward so completely that its effects appear to come from the world rather than from the self. Jung's great insight was that this is precisely what the unconscious does. What we do not make conscious within ourselves tends to come to us from the outside as fate. The pattern we refuse to see or cannot see does not disappear. It operates anyway, shaping our lives from the darkness, and because we do not recognize it as ours, we experience its effects as destiny. The complex we have not made conscious becomes the fate we cannot escape, not because it is truly fated, but because an unconscious pattern, by definition, operates outside our awareness and therefore outside our conscious control. We cannot change what we cannot see. And so the pattern repeats, feeling all the while like something happening to us rather than something arising from within us. This is a sobering understanding, but it contains within it the seed of liberation. Because if the repetition of pain is driven by an unconscious complex that we experience as fate, then the way out is not to try harder to avoid the pattern through willpower, which fails because you cannot outmaneuver something you cannot see. The way out is consciousness. It is to make the unconscious pattern conscious, to bring the complex into the light of awareness, to finally see the mechanism that has been operating in the dark. What is unconscious controls us and appears as fate. What is made conscious can be worked with, integrated, and changed. The entire difference between a life ruled by the repetition of pain and a life freed from it lies in this movement from unconsciousness to consciousness. And that movement is the work Jung believed every person is called to undertake. Jung's understanding of the complex points toward a clear, if demanding, path out of the repetition of pain. The work is not easy, and it is rarely quick, but it is real, and it follows directly from everything we've explored. The first movement is to recognize the pattern, to see, honestly and without flinching, that there is a repetition. This is the essential first step, and it is harder than it sounds, because the whole nature of the complex is to operate unseen, disguised as fate, as bad luck, as the fault of others. The work is to step back and look at your life with honesty, tracing the recurring pain across its different appearances. What is the wound that keeps recurring? What is the pattern beneath the different circumstances? When you look at the relationships that hurt you, The situations that keep going wrong, the disappointments that keep arriving. What is the common thread? Naming the pattern, seeing that it is a pattern rather than a series of unrelated misfortunes, is the beginning of consciousness, and consciousness is the beginning of freedom. The second movement is to trace the pattern to its root, to find the original wound around which the complex formed. Jung understood that the complex is organized around an early experience, usually from childhood, and that understanding this origin is crucial to loosening its grip. So the work is to ask where this pattern began. What early experience does the recurring pain echo? What original wound is being repeated? The relationships that abandon you, do they echo an early abandonment? The situations that make you feel not good enough, do they repeat an early experience of inadequacy? This is not about blame, and it is not about wallowing in the past. It is about understanding the structure of the complex, tracing the repetition back to its source, so that you can finally see the whole pattern rather than only its latest appearance. The third movement is to withdraw the projection, to recognize that the pattern lives in you rather than simply in the outer world. This is one of the most difficult and most transformative parts of the work. As long as you experience the pattern as something the world does to you, you remain its victim, and it remains beyond your power to change. The shift comes when you recognize that the complex is yours, that you are, without meaning to, drawn toward the people and situations that fit its pattern, projecting its structure onto the outer world, and then being wounded by what you've unconsciously arranged. This is a painful recognition because it means accepting responsibility for a pattern you did not consciously choose. But it is also profoundly empowering because what lives in you is something you can work with, while what lives in the world is not. To withdraw the projection is to reclaim the pattern as your own, and in doing so, to gain the power to change it. The fourth movement is to bring consciousness to the moment of activation, to catch the complex in the act. Once you understand your pattern, you can begin to recognize when it is being activated. When you feel that familiar magnetic pull toward a person or situation that fits the old wound, when you feel the emotions of the complex flooding in, when you sense yourself being drawn toward the repetition. The work in that moment is to pause, to bring conscious awareness to what is happening, to recognize, this is the complex, activated again. This is the pull toward the familiar pain. In that moment of conscious recognition, a space opens up, a space between the activation and the automatic response. And in that space, for the first time, a different choice becomes possible. You are no longer simply possessed by the complex, acting out its pattern unconsciously. You are aware of it, and awareness is precisely what the complex cannot survive intact. Each time you bring consciousness to the moment of activation, the complex loses a little of its autonomous power, and you gain a little more freedom to choose something other than the familiar wound. The same pain has kept finding you, not because you are cursed, not because you want to suffer, and not because fate has singled you out. It has kept finding you because a complex, an organized center of wounded energy, formed around an early injury and operating autonomously beneath your awareness, has been drawing you toward it, again and again, projecting its pattern onto the world and pulling you into the repetitions that keep its charge alive. You have been experiencing as fate what was all along an unconscious pattern within yourself. And this, though it is hard to hear, is the best possible news. Because a fate cannot be changed, but a pattern can, once it is made conscious. Jung's entire understanding of psychological healing rested on this movement from unconsciousness to consciousness. What remains unconscious rules us and appears to us as destiny. What is made conscious can be understood, worked with, and transformed. The repetition of pain that has shaped your life is not a life sentence. It is a complex that has been operating in the dark, and the moment you begin to bring it into the light, to see the pattern, to trace it to its root, to recognize it as yours, to catch it in the act of activation, you begin to break its power. Not all at once, not perfectly, but really. Each act of consciousness loosens the grip of the pattern that unconsciousness kept in place. This is difficult work, and it is the work of time, not of a single insight. The complex has had years, perhaps decades, to entrench itself, and it does not release its hold easily. But every time you recognize the pattern instead of being swept into it, every time you feel the familiar pull and bring awareness to it rather than simply following it, every time you choose consciousness over the automatic repetition, you reclaim a little of the life the complex had been living for you. And slowly, the pattern that felt like fate reveals itself as something you can finally change. You are not doomed to keep choosing the same kind of pain. That choosing was never truly free. It was the complex, operating in the dark, wearing the disguise of fate. And the light of consciousness, patiently and persistently brought to the pattern, is the one thing that can finally set you free from it. The wound that formed the complex was not your fault, but the healing, the slow, conscious work of seeing what was hidden and choosing differently, is yours to claim. And on the other side of it is something you may have stopped believing was possible. A life no longer ruled by the repetition of the same old pain, but finally, consciously, your own.